Hi, I'm Eric Michelson, and I farm 81 acres here in Los Osos at Clark Valley Farm. We purchased the property in 2002, and right from the start we wanted to develop the farm as an organic farm, so we immediately put together our application as a certified organic farm and got our certification in 2003, and we've been farming as a certified organic farm since then. We think it's the right thing to do, both environmentally, for our customers, and for ourselves economically. Organic produce doesn't have to be expensive, and that was one of our goals, was to farm and produce affordable organic food. Organic farming has been growing at the rate of 20% a year, and it's a good economic decision for us. Now I'd like to introduce you to a video from farmers in Texas. They farm in Texas, but it has a lot to do with what we do here in California, so I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
My experience in agriculture is that indeed organic agriculture, even, much less sustainable, but pure organic agriculture is more cost efficient for farmers than is the chemical industrialized agriculture. What we found is that people, and particularly farmers, were eager to find new ways of producing, because they were indeed worried about what was happening to them and their families and their neighbors, and they knew that there were poisons in their water supply, and they had a closer identification with these poisons than most environmentalists in cities do, because they were dealing with them every day. But as one farmer told me, Hightower, I agree, we are using way too many chemicals. Said, but I don't know how to farm any other way, because they go to college at A&M or Tech or San Angelo or wherever else in our ag schools, and until recently, those were chemical schools, and then they go to farm. And they know what kind of chemicals they're supposed to use on what, and what they don't know, you've got the Ag Extension Service out there, their local agents, saying, oh yeah, here's your chemical list, you can choose among this menu of assorted chemicals for your cotton or sorghum or whatever, and then you've got your banker saying, well, here's your chemical schedule, you'll put this chemical on at this time and that chemical on at that time, and it's printed out. And if the farmer says, well, no, I think I'd rather not do that, or I'd rather use less chemicals, or I want to do sustainable, or I want to be really crazy, like you just dressed up in a pink tutu or something, and I want to do some industric farming. Well, they say, well, fine, boy, but you're not getting a loan from us. So the whole system is geared to the chemicalization and industrialization of agriculture.
I could see where we were going, the direction we were going in. I just didn't feel like it would be a continually economically viable way of producing. And it has been a struggle for the conventional growers over the years. They've had more lean years than they've had good years. And so I got into the organics by virtue of thinking that there had to be a better way, one that was better for the environment, one that would be better for the long term of my land, the viability, its production, and that I would have something that I know, or I would know that when I passed it on to my kids, that they too would have something that would be healthy and which to work from. The organic industry, as far as agriculture, has probably only been the bright star for the last 10 years. Since 1990, organic production, dollar volume sales have increased a minimum of 20% a year for the last 10 years. It's was originally looked upon as a specialty market, a niche. But I can honestly say that with passing time, as I've seen it go by, that organics is more mainstream every day and will continue to be so. It offers the buying public a choice. And when there is as much concern as there is about what's being consumed, it's something that people pay more attention to and become more interested in.
I think people should be independent, and independence begins with food. That is the one thing that we all have to have, food. We don't even really need water if we're growing enough watery vegetables. We can drink our water through our food. So I think that everyone should know how to grow a plant. Everyone should know how to grow a tomato or a head of lettuce. And if they know that, not that they have to do it, but if they know that and can pass it on to their children and to their grandchildren, we have a security there that is not possible any other way. I mean, you see starving people all over the place. You see Africa where the land is turned to desert. So I think that if we'd let people learn how to grow food and grow the foods that are appropriate to their environment and appropriate to the season and give them that knowledge, that they'll have the protection they need to exist as a species. And if we teach them the organic method of conserving the soil, of loving the soil, and thinking strictly of the health of the soil and not worrying about anything else, then we will conserve the soil for future generations and take care of the land so that they too can grow their own food and survive as a species.
Farming with a sense of place, that when we farm here or produce anything here, livestock or crops, that it doesn't look like just somewhere else with the same chemicals, the same kind of machinery. I'm not talking about being Luddites as far as technology, but that we would use those things to create something that fits with where we're at. This is a semi-arid region. That's not going to change. So we can't grow a lot of crops. We certainly can't use things that are going to take a lot of water. But this is a grassland for eons, and that's got to be the basis of our agriculture and our food production. And that on the reverse side, that for consumers, that they know about that too, that they have that sense of place and a feeling of a food shed also. So instead of going to buy just what's the cheapest and seemingly the best kind of food, that they begin to have options to buy food and know where it comes from, that they're conscious in their choices. If we're going to have a nation where 98% or more people are urban, that's a huge, it can have a huge impact if that's a kind of a lifestyle where we make food choices and not just live as consumers, where we think about what we eat connects us to land and to people and to creation. And therefore, even though all of us can't be out producing food, we can be part of the food shed, of the food web.
We try to get compost on athletic fields, and the school board said, oh no, we can't let our kids play in compost. They'll get infections or diseases. Anyway, my employee was out trying to sell it. He went to another school. Suggest they put compost on the athletic fields because it grows a big, thick, beautiful turf. Cut back on irrigation, the kids don't get hurt playing on it. They said, oh no, our kids can't play in compost. They'll get infections or diseases. Well, this employee asked him, he said, well, is it all right to let those kids play in diazinon, Arthene, Dursban, 2,4-D? They had no answer. So happened, I knew Dr. Rex Moyer at Trinity University, top professor over, a biologist, and asked him if he could test compost. He said, Malcolm, he says, Trinity can do that test, but that's a long test, several months, 8 or 9 months. It could cost you $3,000 or better. I said, let's do it. Well, after he was into the test 2 months, he called me and wanted to know if I ever seen insects in my compost pile. I said, well, no, it gets too hot. He said, well, the reason I asked, he said, 28% of the microbes he's isolating out are well-known microbes that are pathogenic to troublesome insects, keeps them in control. That's why the people that put compost on their lawn never have grubs, chinch bugs, fleas, or ticks, and even the fire ants stay away if you use the compost often. Well, Dr. Moyer called me later, and he says, you know, Beck, you got some valuable stuff in that compost pile. I said, well, I try to tell people that. He said, what I'm getting at now, he says another 18% of microbes he's isolating out are well-known microbes that industry uses to break down toxic materials, that you can't break it down anywhere else. The microbes can disassemble anything we put together if you give them the environment to work in. When Dr. Moyer was finally through with the test, it was a stack of papers 3/8 of an inch thick, and I asked him to summarize it so I wouldn't have to read all that stuff. And he summarized it on one page. He said there were no frank pathogens found in any of the 4 composts we gave him. He says, oh, they're loaded with microbes, but they're the decomposers and opportunistic microbes. He said there's not a microbe in any of these composts. I gave him 4 different types at 4 different ages. He said there are no microbes in there that would be pathogenic to man, plant, or animal. With that study, we got it on 2 football fields in San Antonio. Well, the state of Texas offers 2 Class 5A state championships. That's the big schools. Well, guess what? Those 2 schools won Class 5A state championship the same year, the first 2 schools in the area to have compost.
We drafted a bill that we got filed in the legislature this last session that would have banned the production of non-food substances in food crops. And the argument is regardless of what you think about whether or not we should be genetically engineering food crops to enhance them or to protect the crop, that it's a bad idea to produce other substances that are not intended to be eaten, like drugs, chemicals in food crops, because it's inevitable that the gene is going to transfer to other food crops. I mean, we've seen that instance with corn, where we had corn that was designed to produce a pesticide to protect the corn, contaminated other corn crops. And right now, all of the corn, for the most part, has some contamination with genetically engineered corn. Well, that corn was designed to actually be consumed, so the risk to us is maybe not that great. I mean, other people may differ as to what the risk was, but for the most part, it's not that great of a risk. But if you're engineering corn to produce a drug, or engineering corn to produce a chemical, and you contaminate the regular food supply with it, that's huge. You've totally destroyed that food and possibly endangered the public. So that was the goal of the bill, was to prohibit this practice. And this is an instance where people get it. Largely, I think the public is very confused about genetic engineering. They're not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. They're a little nervous. I think, by and large, most people want food labeled, that if it's genetically engineered, they should know it, and then they could make the choice as to whether they want to consume it or not. And the industry, of course, is totally against that. I mean, their feeling is, gosh, if people knew what this was, they wouldn't eat it. Duh. But when you tell them that they're genetically engineering regular food crops to produce other substances, people go, that's just ludicrous. You know, what if that got out into the regular food supply? You know, my kids could have, you know, a spermicide in their Cheerios. That's not good by accident. And we know that quality control in these areas is not perfect.
We've known for a long time about the beneficial effects of using organic and natural fertilizers and pest control methods in farming. But now we're going to take a humorous look at the unintended consequences of using unnatural pesticides, chemical pesticides and fertilizers.
Spray this solution directly on fruits and vegetables, and within hours, you can watch your garden grow. Well, Denali, I have to leave for the concert. Will you spray these watermelons with this solution for me?
Sure, Gumby. You don't mind if I spray the solution as chunks of ice?
No, it's good for the plants. The solution soaks in more gradually as the ice melts.
They're stealing Gumby's watermelons. I better wake up Denali. Denali! Denali!
What's the matter, Tilly?
Come look through this window. See?
Well, I'll stop that right now.
You stopped them all right. Quack, 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 quack.
Ah, I see you brought my watermelon. Here is your money.
Pack up the instruments and let's go see what's happening.
Help! Help!
Holy Toledo! Looks like a giant watermelon inside.
Oh, that poor lady's car!
Looks like Disaster City ahead. Hey, fellas, we're being followed.
stole most of your watermelons. Come see what Denali has to do to the ones still left in the field, right?
It must have been that super grow spray. We probably shouldn't have let Denali freeze it.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost forgot. Denali can save us. Denali, come out to the road.
What does it say, Gumby?
Mastodon saves countryside from disaster and melon thieves captured.
It doesn't mention me.
What we offered to farmers, starting mostly with smaller farmers because they were more amenable to ideas, was information, instruction on sustainable practices, markets. We would help them get in the door of places they could not now even talk to the buyers of, from major supermarkets like Kroger, which was one of our first successes, to farmers markets selling directly to consumers, to the international market. And you got to remember that organic is not, people say organic, well that's just, you don't use chemicals. Well, that's the least of it. You don't use chemicals, but what you do is build your soil. And modern agriculture, agribusiness, has gotten away from the notion that culture is the important side of that. And the soil is a culture. It's alive. And if you constantly poison it, yeah, you're killing the bug that might eat your cotton plant, but you're killing the other microorganisms that are in there and beneficial bugs along the way, and ultimately you're killing the soil itself. It's got to have those microorganisms. That's the life that is in the soil. And so organic means slowly building that soil back up so that it's got a productive capacity again. And we used a fellow out in West Texas, in Gaines County, way West Texas, and he was a sizable corn farmer and had 600 acres of corn and other commodities that he raised as well. And he came to us because he had been farming the conventional way, graduated out of Texas Tech, went back, took over the family farm, began to apply the chemicals and et cetera. And this was in the mid-1980s, early to mid, and that was a farm crisis time. Still is. The TV cameras don't cover it today, but the farm crisis is still there. Back then they were covering it. So we had tractorcades and farmers going broke, and he was penciling it out at his kitchen table and said, I'm going broke, and then he felt bad. He said, my daddy survived the drought of the 1950s on this farm. My granddaddy survived the Depression, and I'm going to lose the farm, So that's a very personal and hard thing for family to absorb. So he began to kind of fidget around and figure, well, what else can I do? What could I be doing? And he came across some material on sustainable agriculture practices. And like farmers do, they experiment all the time. They're in their kitchen or out in their shed. They're trying to figure this or that out, and it may be a new tool. It might be a new way of plowing. They listen to other farmers, and they look for an edge. Even in the good times, they're looking for an edge. Well, these were bad times. And so he began to call people around the country. Well, what's this stuff, you know, and can that really work? And then what he ultimately did was to begin to he quit the chemicals. They were costing him a bundle. It's extraordinarily costly to buy the chemicals and then to apply them. And he decided he was going to quit it, and he was going to raise corn organically. And he went and got some of that manure that's piled up out there in the feedlots. You know, there's so much manure that they can't know what to do with it. So he began to take it and plow it into his soil. And everybody laughed at him. You know, the county agents scoffed at him at the cafe. They were, well, there's old Mr. Organic, you know. And sure enough, his first year, his yield was cut in half. His corn yield was cut in half. But he understood that was going to happen, and he kept at it. And in the second year, his yield was only a fourth less than it had been. And then the third year, his yield was 25% higher than it had been before. And it was costing him way less money, and he was getting a premium price, an organic price, on the corn. So he turned his farm around in a 3-year period. Now what was going on there was the soil was building up. The soil had to gain tilth, the essence of which is to sustain the plant, so you got strong plants. It's got the microorganisms and nutrients in there, so the plant itself is absorbing more nutrients, so you got a better product, more fruit, and so the culture side of agriculture begins to take over, and we forget that we've forgotten that lesson that my Uncle Ben Fletcher knew. I think that agriculture is the art and science of cooperating with nature, not of overwhelming nature. But the powers in our agriculture policy area, those who are the middlemen, those who make the chemicals, sell the machinery, who own the seeds and patent the seeds and manipulate the seeds, are the ones who make policy in Washington, most state capitals. Those powers don't see the change coming, and they're dead set against that change coming. But it's coming because the customers are saying, we want food that is clean. And that means we want the least amount of chemicals in it. We don't want it genetically altered. We don't want it overly processed. We want a good, what's called a pure food system. And by customers, I mean Republicans living in North Dallas. This is what they want, because they don't want putting poison in their babies' mouths. This is why markets like Whole Foods and the Central Market here in Austin and Wheatsville Co-op and the Pure Food markets all around Texas and all around the country are the fastest growing markets that there are in the food industry, because people with money are in there looking for that kind of a product.